Good evening and welcome to WCTV's live election night coverage. My name is Liam Bridgman. I'm the co-editor-in-chief of the Western Carolinian and the treasurer of WCTV. On this live stream, we will be discussing important topics that are critical for student voters.
Hello, my name is Sadie Bean. I'm the co-head editor of the Western Carolinian Journalists, and I'm a staff writer for the Western Carolinian. This live stream will also be talking with the director of the Jackson County Board of Elections, Lisa Lovedahl-Reese, on the preliminary results from early voting and the absentee votes.
Hi, my name is Nick Childs. I'm the co-editor-in-chief of the Western Carolinian and president of WCU's chapter of Society of Professional Journalists. We will also be presenting data collected from a WCTV poll sent out earlier to students this month. All of that and more coming up.
Sadie, are you excited for this broadcast?
I am so excited. I'm a little nervous. This is my first time being on live TV, but I'm excited.
Me as well. It's very important that we're talking voters, but let's go now. Thank you again for joining us for WC's from WCU's CAT studio. We are actually going live to the Jackson County Board of Elections to speak with Lisa Lovedahl-Reese to start the broadcast. Lisa, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. How are you?
Perfect. Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Good. You just closed the polling. What are the preliminary results?
Yes, I actually just ran out of the room for like 5 seconds so I could go ahead right at 7:30 release the totals for one stop and absentees by mail. They are on the North Carolina State Board's website. It looks like we had 9,550 one stop and absentee by mail voters.
Great, good to hear. So how many ballots were casted today that you have left to count?
We still have the ones from the precincts. Those have not been tabulated and into our office yet. It normally takes about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours for the polls to get completely shut down and then to transport the totals to our office. And then at that point, as soon as they come in, we make them live on the State Board's website.
Gotcha. Thank you, Lisa. So have you had any issues with technology issues or maybe voter intimidation throughout the election process?
No, today we did not have any problems with the voting equipment. It worked really good. You know, you always have a little bit of logistics. One printer just doesn't want to work and it jams. You fix it and then everything's good. Voter intimidation on a whole, you know, everybody was respectful of everybody. So that works out really well. At the polls, we really didn't have that many problems. In fact, I saw a lot of people who were telling the precinct workers, you know, thank you for a great job. So that's really great because they do a wonderful job for no pay and, you know, very long hours. So please be kind to your precinct workers and tell them thank you.
Will do. Thank you very much, Lisa, for joining us. Have a great day. So, Sadie, good interview with Lisa. She gave us a very good insight on the voting process.
She did.
That was an interesting turnout there, Lisa. Thank you very much.
Okay. Do we start?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Wow, what an interesting turnout. Coming up next, reporter Tyra Syverson had a chance to interview political science professor Chris Cooper on the midterm elections and why it's important to vote during this midterm elections.
Good evening. I'm Tyra Severson, and I'm here with Dr. Chris Cooper, Professor of Political Science at WCU. And today we're here to talk about the election and its importance to Jackson County. So first off, this midterm election for Jackson County, including the county commissioners and sheriff races, is really intriguing. Can you tell us what that means for residents of the county?
Yeah, I mean, it means probably more than anything else happening right now. So there's going to be all sorts of attention. I know we'll talk about the U.S. Senate race, but these local elections are key. So right now, our county commission is controlled by majority Democrats right now. So the Democrats have more seats on that county commission than the Republicans do. All 3 seats up this time are held by Democrats. So that could change in really important ways. Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad, depends on your perspective, this election. We also have the sheriff race. So our sitting sheriff, Chip Hall, is stepping down. He's going to retire. And so we have a Democratic candidate and a Republican candidate both running for that office. There's been more and more scrutiny on these positions in the state and nationally. So I hope folks will pay attention not just to the top of the ticket, but to what's going on a little bit closer to home here in Jackson County. Whether you're a student or a resident of Jackson County, or whether you're both, these are the people who are making the decisions that are going to affect your lives.
How has Jackson County voted in past elections in terms of turnout and political leaning?
Yeah, so Jackson County is a really interesting county. So the vast majority of counties in our state are bright blue or they're bright red. We're somewhere near purple, maybe a light shade of red, if you will. So we voted for Barack Obama in 2008, who was the Democratic candidate for president. We voted for Republican presidential candidates since then. We've also voted 1 out of the last 2 times for a Democratic candidate for Governor Roy Cooper. We've got a Democratic county commission. We voted for Republican for many other offices. So we're one of the rare counties in the state of North Carolina that isn't just firmly in one camp or the other. So it's a county to watch, of course, if you live here, but even if you live elsewhere in the state, you should be paying attention to Jackson County.
Why do you think that we tend to be more purple? Do you think it has to do with college students voting, or
Sure.
what is your take on that?
Yeah, a lot of it's the university. Look, I mean, this is a large university in the middle of a very rural area. So without the university, sure, this place would be a lot redder, more Republican than it is today. That doesn't mean that all of our students are Democrats or blue. That's not true at all. But I do think it moves us a little bit more purple, as do many of the university folks who live around here. We also get a lot of in-migrants from other places to Jackson County because of the university. And so that also makes us sort of hold this little more purple hue than you would otherwise expect.
So you've researched how much people in our county trust the government on local or federal levels. Would you care to share some of this research you found that's important?
Sure, happy to. It's bad news, I'm going to warn you at the front end. So what we see is that trust in government is down nationally, it's down in our state, and it's down locally. And particularly the farther you get from the state capital, so the farther you are away from Raleigh, the less you tend to trust state government. We're a long ways from Raleigh, so I think that should tell you kind of what we're finding, is that our trust in state government is lower here than it tends to be in the Triangle. We tend to have a little bit more faith in local government, so that's probably a good thing, but it's still not at high levels. We're not talking 80, 90% of people. People are very suspect of government, local, state, or national here. It just happens to be that they dislike their local government less than they dislike their state or national government.
Right. Do you have any intriguing data on student voting and turnout, such as having a polling place on campus at the UC, has that impacted students' engagement in elections?
Yeah, it's really unique and I think important that we have a polling place, an early voting site here on campus. And folks may know there's also one almost across the street from campus at Cullowhee Recreational Center. So that's really unusual to have 2 sites so close together. It's a good thing for democracy. It's a good thing for voter turnout. What we tend to see with our students is that they're overwhelmingly unaffiliated. As a matter of fact, 2 election cycles, we had the largest percentage of unaffiliated voters of any early voting site in the entire state of North Carolina. Wow. So they're not registered Democrats, they're not registered Republicans, they're registered none of the above.
Wow, wow. Has student voting impacted Jackson County results, and like what ways?
It has. I mean, we've got some really tight elections that have happened here in Jackson County. And so when we say every vote counts, I know people's eyes sort of gloss over and they think, okay, of course it does. But it really does here. So I'll give you one good example. Town of Silva, obviously not very far away. Some students may know it as, I don't know, Home of Innovation Brewery, or however they happen to know it. They had a town council election that was decided by a coin toss. So a coin toss determined who was on the town council. Now you're probably thinking, well, you're pulling that one, that's kind of a weird example. One election cycle before that, another coin toss election. There are 2 people on Silva's town board who were elected by coin tosses because they had tied ballots. So what does that mean? If there's even one WCU student who happens to live in the town of Silva, there certainly is, then it is no exaggeration to say that they might have changed the governance policy in this town of Silva.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I had no idea. In terms of national and federal races, which one stands out as most competitive in these elections, such as the NC District 119 race between Mike Clampett and El Platt could be competitive? What do you think?
It's a really interesting race, okay? So this is the state house we're talking about. So North Carolina, like 49 states, has a state house and a state senate. There's one, Nebraska's kind of weird, they have a unicameral legislature. But in North Carolina, we have 2. And so District 119 is our state house district. That includes Swain County, Jackson County, and Transylvania County. We've got incumbent Mike Clampett, who's a Republican, against Democrat Al Platt, and he's the challenger. And this is a really interesting race for a lot of reasons. One is, it is a rare example of a potentially competitive rural district. Usually in North Carolina and in every other state, if it's rural, it's Republican. That may not be the case here. I think Mike Clampett is the favorite. He's the incumbent. We do tend to lean more red in this district, but this is not a foregone conclusion. So I really hope folks, whether you're on the right side or the left side of the aisle, or you're somewhere in the middle, will pay attention to that race.
How about the race for NC House District 11? Who do you think has the best chance of replacing Madison Cawthorn?
Yeah, this is another kind of nationally important race, and so Madison Cawthorn, of course, lost in his primary. We could spend an hour talking about that. We won't today. But Chuck Edwards is the Republican who is a sitting state senator from Henderson County. If you've eaten at a McDonald's in Henderson County, you've probably given him a little share of your money. He's running against Jasmine Beach Ferrara, who's a Democrat from Buncombe County. She's currently on the county commission. This is a district that leans red. There's no doubt about it. We expect the Republican candidate, Chuck Edwards in this case, to win. If Jasmine Beach Ferrara does pull off an upset, it would be one of the largest upsets in the entire country. So folks should definitely pay attention to that race, know that it leans Republican, but there's a reason we play the game. There's a reason that we actually have the election. We don't call them until the votes are in.
For the second seat for Senate in D.C. Is replacing longtime Senator Richard Burr. It seems that the race between former Judge Cherry Beasley and Republican Representative Ted Budd is making NC a swing state. What do you predict? Who do you predict has a better chance?
Yeah, I mean, this one is really tight. So there was a poll that recently came out of the conservative-leaning John Locke Foundation, and they showed these 2 folks, Cherry Beasley, the Democrat, and Ted Budd, the Republican, tied. Now, usually when I say tied, I mean within the margin of error. I mean tied, like the exact same percentage of people say they're going to vote for one candidate as the other. This is as tight as they get. And so we're starting to see more and more ads in the state of North Carolina. They're also getting nastier and nastier. So some data recently came out that shows that we have the 3rd most attack ads of any U.S. Senate race in the country. So this one is important, it's close, and it's nasty.
Why do you think there's so many attack ads in this particular race?
You know, I think part of it is that it is so close. This is the rarity. It is an open seat in a purple state. So we expect to see that one get expensive. We expect to see it get nasty. We've got a lot of outside money coming in. So some of these negative, nasty attack ads aren't even run by Budd or Beasley. They're run by people who want to elect Budd or Beasley. And so that's one thing that turns it so negative.
Gotcha. What national issues will impact issues that residents of Jackson County find important on a local level?
Look, there's so much this year, but I think a lot of it boils down to what I think of as BAIT, B-A-I-T. It's Biden, abortion, inflation, and Trump. And essentially you've got the Democratic Party saying, hey, pay attention to Trump, pay attention to abortion. You've got the Republican Party saying, no, 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 pay attention to Biden, pay attention to inflation. So as folks are watching these races, I hope what they're looking for is not just where people stand on the issues, but which issues they bring up more often, which issues they try to push to the top of the agenda. And I think that tells you a lot about how a member of Congress, a senator, a county commissioner will spend their scarce resources when they're actually elected to office.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Chris Cooper, for coming in and sharing your knowledge on this election today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. What a great perspective. Up next, reporters Sadie Kennedy, Marlon Alexander, and Giovanni Riccardi covered the Jackson County Commissioner's race. Big topics covered during the debate was housing and the opioid crisis.
Incumbent Democrats Brian McMahon, Gail Woody, and Boyce Dietz are going head-to-head with Republican competitors Mark Letson, Todd Bryson, and John Smith for the County Commissioner's Chair, District 1 and 2 seats. With Jackson County facing issues like the opioid crisis and the housing crisis, a problem facing us nationwide, voters are looking for candidates with solutions. Here's what they had to say.
There were two options, an option A and an option B. We chose to go with option A, which has some defined specific areas that you can spend that money, like prevention methods. It might be drug treatment.
It's not hardly a week goes by we don't have someone die of overdose. And every one of you know somebody has.
We want to be very targeted, and we want to be very much thoughtful in a program that will be sustainable.
To get treatment available to everyone in this county. We don't have a crisis center for substance abuse in this area.
I think the first line of defense on keeping the drugs out of Jackson County is law enforcement. We need to get the dealers and make sure that they know that they're not welcome here.
I think we should perhaps even look at some of these larger builders instead of looking local. Someone can build 7 homes in the time frame that it takes a local builder to build 3. Then maybe we should reach out to them and see if they're wanting to come to this community.
And they can't afford their rent anymore. What am I going to do about it? Well, that's a tough decision. I mean, we can't hand money to people to get their houses, but we can certainly look at other builders, other solutions.
A lot of pressure from Western Carolina University as far as housing. When you got 11,000 students here, and a lot of them's looking for somewhere to stay rather than a dorm, well then that's one of the big pressures that's causes us to have some of the problems we have.
We've recently formed a affordable housing committee. I called for that committee to meet today to get an update from them. We're working with housing consortiums to talk about evaluating properties here in Jackson County, to look at building some housing units.
Young families now are struggling so hard. We have partnered with Mountain Projects to build several affordable homes, but that is just a start. It's just a drop in the bucket.
With issues the county and the nation are facing, voters are faced with making important decisions as we come head-to-head with an important election year.
I'm sitting with reporter Sadie Kennedy, our student expert for the commissioner's race. Can you tell us more about the race?
Right, so it is a very important race here in Jackson County, this midterm election. We have 3 incumbent Democrats who are running for re-election against their Republican competitors, but a couple other issues that I wanted to talk about other than the opioid crisis and the housing crisis is just redevelopment of Jackson County, bringing Jackson County back into the 21st century. I believe it was Mark Letson who brought it up during the debate about bringing better broadband into the county, which is definitely a problem. We all see it as Western students, how the service is not that great. We also saw it last night when we had a county-wide outage of service. So that was one topic that is really going to help sway voters as well. And just bringing in like new restaurants and businesses that are going to bring in better job opportunities and more money for the county as well. So we'll see how it goes, but it seems like both sides have good plans.
All right. And which way do you see the race is heading? And do you think the Republican challengers can win the vote against the incumbent Democrats?
I'm not really sure. I'm actually very excited to see how it turns out. I know that the county is very, very divided. So we'll see. Like I said, both parties seem to have a really good plan ahead of themselves. But like I said, the county is very divided, and it'll be interesting to see, especially who wins chairman position. Mark Letson is running against Brian McMahon, but Brian McMahon has been on the board for about 20 years now, so we'll see how that goes. All right.
Well, thank you, Sadie, and it was great having you.
Yeah,
Back
thank
to
you.
Liam.
Thank you, Sadie, and thank you, other Sadie. The current sheriff of Jackson County, Chip Hall, is retiring at the end of the year, and the two runners-up are on the ballot are Doug Farmer and Rick Buchanan. Both candidates align similarly with many important issues that affect the position. Our very own Sadie Bean teamed up with reporter Chloe Ettinger and tech support Victor Van John to give us an in-depth view of the race.
Come November 9th, Jackson County will have a new sheriff in town. Rick Buchanan is the Democratic candidate. He's a Jackson County native who has 30 years' experience as an officer. He has served as an investigator, a school resource officer, dispatcher, detention officer, sergeant, patrol deputy, worked in civil process, and has his advanced law enforcement certificate from the state of North Carolina.
I've spent my whole career giving back to my community. I've been a volunteer fireman for 35 years. I actually started that before I became a deputy sheriff. I think that's what sparked the interest in me as far as helping people and giving back to the community by being involved with a volunteer organization such as that and getting to know a lot of the officers.
Doug Farmer is the Republican candidate and is also a Jackson County native who worked 11 years in the Macon County Sheriff's Office and a short time with Highlands Police and Silva Police. Farmer started working with the Jackson County Sheriff's Office in 2010 as a road patrol sergeant. Although he retired in 2019, he still serves his community. He was also a detention officer, a SWAT officer, and served in Iraq.
My name's Doug Farmer. I'm running for the office of sheriff for Jackson County. I would love to serve as sheriff for Jackson County and obtain any votes that I could get on November 8th. I'll work hard, not just for one party. I'll work hard for everybody in this community throughout Jackson County. WCU students, everybody within Jackson County, because we're all in this together.
We asked the candidates about what their goals are and what they would do if elected.
So I have vested interest in Jackson County and the safety for our future. The kids, that is our future. And I want to see them grow and learn, and everybody deserves a safe place to do that.
It's not about one person, it's not about one office, it's about us as a community. And if we don't work together, then we're going to fail. So I look forward to serving as sheriff for Jackson County. I look forward to working with WCU and all the communities around Jackson County.
Our candidates address fighting drug-related problems with an aggressive approach.
Number one is on my agenda is the drug problem. The drug problem, we need to have a focused, targeted, and aggressive approach to it because the drugs have gotten out of control in Jackson County as well as across the nation. I can't focus on anything across the nation, but here at home, we can focus on that as a sheriff's office. We've got to go after the dealers that are dealing this poison on our streets. Number one, how do we do that? First one is up close and personal.
His drugs is the biggest issue that we've had. It comes up in every community meeting that we've ever been to. I would like to attack it from both ends. We need to be as aggressive as we can and take as many drugs off the street as we can. We need to do as many investigations into the drug trade as possible. On the backside of that, we need to develop programs.
Both candidates observed the importance of school safety concerning Western Carolina University students.
But the things we need to do for the students, number one is make sure that they have a safe environment there. And you want to make sure that the environment around them, the community around them, is a safe environment. Because WCU students travel into Silva, they travel throughout the county. So the community patrols are going to help with that and making sure that they have officers there in the communities where they're at. And work in conjunction with the students as well. I mean, if they see issues on campus that needs dealing with, that may need to be dealt with between the sheriff's office and campus police, that we can work hand in hand there.
Like I said, kids are our future, and we need to protect those. They need a safe place to learn. As far as Western Carolina University goes, we've got campus police here, but still the outlying areas that is off campus falls under the jurisdiction of the sheriff's office. And that's stuff that we need to grow. We need to add officers when we can and do as much as we can to protect those kids.
Stay tuned to see who is elected as the Jackson County Sheriff. This was brought to you by reporter Sadie Bean and Chloe Ettinger and producer and editor Victor Venjon.
I'm here with Chloe Ettinger. She is the co-editor-in-chief of the Western Carolina Journalist. So, Chloe, you work to cover the sheriff race, and you mentioned some similarities between the candidates. What are those similarities?
Yeah, some of those similarities whenever I was interviewing both of them was that they both really want to take an aggressive approach towards taking drugs off of the streets, because the drug problem is probably one of the biggest problems that they have in Jackson County. I believe that it was Rick Buchanan saying that was brought up almost at every town meeting. I also want to take this opportunity to say that every Jackson County police officer, whenever I asked both of them, said that they do carry Narcan, so I do feel like that's important for people to know, but they want to try their best to get drugs off the streets, especially on campus as well, to keep children safe.
So with the candidates being so similar, who do you think is going to end up winning this race?
In my opinion, I personally think that Rick Buchanan is going to win this race because he does have more experience as a sworn officer than Doug. And I also believe that since he does have a little bit more of a plan for rehabilitation, they both touched on rehabilitation, and Rick Buchanan has more of a plan. I think that personally he will win.
Well, thank you for having Chloe. Thank
you for having me.
We loved having you here, Chloe, and we can't wait to see you back in the newsroom. For our next segment, Madison Fair, Lauren Kikorin, and Lily Staple cover the District 119 race. This election is important for who will take control in North Carolina. Republicans control the House and the Senate, but they don't have supermajority with a Democratic governor. Democrats have the power of veto. Republicans need 5 seats to reach again that supreme majority that they had from 2012 to 2016.
All 120 seats in the North Carolina House of Representatives are up for election in 2022. The Republican Party currently holds 69 seats, while the Democratic Party holds 51 seats. The incumbent for District 119 is Republican Mike Clampett, a retired fire captain from Bryson City who won the seat in 2020. His opponent, Democrat Al Platt, is an architect from Brevard with no previous experience in politics. Western Carolina University hosted a 2-hour debate between the candidates where a variety of issues were discussed, including housing prices, inflation, education, abortion, and most importantly for students, debt and loan forgiveness. Clampett graduated community college in 1976, according to his representative website, was adamant that students can afford to pay loans as they attend school, and that the struggles with student debt now are due to predatory loaners.
Went to school, and I graduated college. I had no student loan. I paid as I went, and that's what most people do is pay as they go.
However, Platt sees loan forgiveness as an investment.
To help students get to these educations, and we need to treat those things as investments.
In regards to inflation, Clampett said that the tax cuts already in place by the NC General Assembly is the solution, and that the government has no right to limit companies' profits. Platt proposed relief through the expansion of Medicaid and affordable child care. Another polarizing issue is abortion.
It's their right, and no man and no governmental agency or office needs to interfere with any of that.
The race between Clampett and Platt will come to a close tonight, November 8th.
Welcome back. I'm sitting with reporter Lily Staple, our District 119 student reporter. So Lily, tell us about the race and what you think the final turnout will be.
Well, the race has been really interesting. Mike Clampett, the current incumbent, has been in office since 2018, and he's kind of a local favorite in the area. But he does have his work cut out for him in this election because he's made his opinions on pro-life, limiting healthcare funding and stuff like that. not wanting to limit profits made by businesses to help inflation and stuff like that. And he's also not in support of student loan forgiveness. Al Platt, the Democratic opponent he's going against, is super pro-choice, super for student loan forgiveness, and really believes in the expansion of Medicaid and affordable childcare to help reduce inflation. So it's kind of a hard race to see who wins. It depends really a lot on what population votes the most, like whether it's the WCU community or the local community, because they're majority Republican while WCU is majority Democrat.
All right. And what do you think the deciding factor in this race will be?
I think probably the most important factor in this race is the abortion issue, because it's been such a big topic politically lately. So I don't really know. We'll just kind of see.
All right.
There are many important races coming up during the midterm elections, one of which being the race for the open North Carolina 11th District seat in the House of Representatives. The chair is currently held by Madison Cawthorn, whose 2-year career as a congressman was riddled with scandals. The 2022 race is between Democrat Jasmine Beach Ferrara, Republican Chuck Edwards, and Libertarian David Coatney. Here's our reporter, Graylin Turner, with the story.
This race is extremely important because the winner of this election will join the House and represent as one of the 13 representatives from North Carolina, impacting the laws and lives of people in Western North Carolina and across the country. We reached out to all 3 candidates for comments on the topic of loan forgiveness and college affordability. Coatney was the only candidate who agreed to an interview. Coatney is a small business owner in Fletcher, North Carolina, and joined the race to fight the divisive environment and hyperpolarization created by the two-party system.
I do believe students should receive relief, but not through student loan forgiveness. One thing that I would like to see is zero interest loans. We really have to ask ourselves, why is the government profiting off of college students just trying to get their education?
In the only debate between Edwards and Beach Ferrara on WLOS in Asheville, student loan debt relief was not covered. Edwards is a business owner from Henderson County. He is currently a senator in the North Carolina Senate. On his campaign website, Edwards did not have any information on the topic of student loan forgiveness or college affordability. On his Twitter, Edwards writes, "At a time when businesses are begging for employees and jobs are plentiful, the Biden administration today said it will delay student loan payments for the 7th time since March 2020. This is a glide path to the liberal dream of forgiving student loan debt altogether." Beach Ferrara is an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ and the current county commissioner for Buncombe County. She is a supporter of student loan debt relief, according to her website. She also wants to invest in community colleges. From her website, Beach Ferrara writes, "I support student loan debt relief because we cannot continue to saddle our young people with a pile of debt before they can even think about buying a first house or even taking out a loan to get a car." According to Ballotpedia and several race trackers, Edwards is projected to win the race by a large margin and has been since the start of October. For WCTV, I am Graylin Turner.
Graylin, you worked on this package and you said that Chuck Edwards has been projected to win this race for a while. Is this still the case?
Yeah, so on Ballotpedia, they have multiple different election trackers, and all of them have a pretty good standing that the Republican Chuck Edwards is going to take it. And it's not just for this district, but many other districts. They're expecting an 80% chance that 214 to 246 seats out of the House of Representatives is going to be fully Republican. So that'll give them a simple majority whenever it comes to voting on laws.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for your insight. I really appreciate you being here with us. Now I'm going to throw it back right to Sadie.
North Carolina Senator race is drawing national attention. Republican Congressman Ted Budd and former North Carolina Supreme Court Chief Justice Sherry Beasley. The election is for the seat of the North Carolina longtime Senator Bicher Burr, and an important seat for Democrats to keep the control over Senate. The race has one of the more negative advertising campaigns, so much so that several television stations in North Carolina refused to run one of the ads from the National Republican Senatorial Committee as false. The last polls from earlier this month puts Bud ahead for 6 points, according to Real Clear Politics. This race also got a lot of money in play. According to the Federal Election Committee, Beasley raised around $34 million. Bud received significantly less in donations from the campaign, supporters little less than $13 million. According to Open Secrets, watchdog organization for money and politics predicted that these midterm elections will exceed over $9 billion spent over the end of the elections.
After the break, on a survey that touch on why this can impact the election results. Stay tuned.
Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
If you love them enough to relearn math so you can teach them math, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
What are you doing in there?
What's that?
I wouldn't do that. What are you doing? What are you looking for?
Since the controversial decision made on June 2nd of 2022 to overturn Roe v. Wade, the topic of abortion has been made one of the biggest hot topic issues of this midterm election across the nation and on WCU's campus. Reporters Deanna Sipe and Madison Pate dug in a little into this topic.
The 20-week mark and still follows the regulations of Roe versus Wade. That might change soon with the new legislation after the election.
The future is still ahead of us. We make change.
We got the chance to chat with Brianna and other WCU students more on why abortion is important when they're voting.
It's very relevant, especially with the overturn of Roe v. Wade and states now having to basically give the rights or not. So I think it's very relevant.
People should state their stance on abortion. It's a large topic. It's something that people are pretty split upon. And I think it's something that a lot of people vote based on what people's views on abortion are.
Democratic candidates support the protection of reproductive rights, whereas Republican candidates running for North Carolina office all would change the present law to fewer than 15 weeks. But how would these results influence students' lives?
You know, I'm a man, but for all my friends that are female, I think it will be good to at least see where it goes, know where it's at, know how I can support.
I guess it depends on who wins, because if it's someone who's against abortion, then that really will affect me as a woman and a student. And then if it's the person who wins is for abortion, then it'll be an ease and not really affect me.
As a student, I think the outcome will affect me just based off of what we talk about in class. You know, I'm in grad school, and so a lot of what we talk about is more specialized. We don't talk much about current events. It's a lot of just scholarship-based stuff. But these issues affect people, and so seeing people's reactions to it, I think, will be the main thing that affects me as a student.
The tension of the unknowable outcome is high for this year.
Thank you for that great package. It's great to hear from students how they feel about these super important topics within this midterm election. So we sent a poll to students of WCU, and we received over 100 responses from the student body for this question that we asked for students on their opinions on abortion. So as you can see by this chart here, almost 60% of students that took the survey, they said that they agreed that abortion should be legal in all cases, or in most cases, and 11% decided to be undecided within this. Back to you, Nick.
With the Federal Reserve raising interest rates and price seemingly going up, our reporters Jake Harkey and Bryson Jusko have the story.
College students are struggling. Inflation, high gas prices, and food prices continue to rise. Students have to work more and longer to afford to stay in school. With the election right around the corner, we asked WCU students how inflation affects them.
Inflation affects me a lot as a college student because it really hires grocery prices a lot, to the point where I'm spending $60 on groceries when I feel like I shouldn't have to do that.
Inflation affects me a lot. Paying for meals and stuff off campus is difficult.
Inflation affects me as a college student because I do a lot of driving just to places, back to Silva or Waynesville or whatever, pick up groceries and that kind of stuff, and gas prices are through the roof. You pay like $7 for cookout now. You didn't have to before. It was like $5, and it's killing you. A cookout tray and a large drink should not cost $10.
Many of the students we talked to had to pick up hours at work or watch how they are spending their money to be able to stay in school.
Yes, I have had to work extra hours to get to these inflation rates. Me and him are actually about to get an apartment, and I'm going to have to take up more days and work way more.
With the midterm elections, students and their votes might have an impact on who wins. Making college more affordable is on their mind.
Yeah, I would say inflation is a factor because I feel like a lot of these political figures, they need to recognize, college students don't really have the money like that to pay for these type of prices because they're having to use money out of their pocket to pay for college.
So, as we can see from this chart, over 86% of students consider inflation a very pressing topic for them, with about 14% saying it's either not that big of a deal or, they're not too concerned about it.
Student loans are always an important subject for students, regardless of an election. Our reporters Sydney Skidmore, Baylina Clark, and Sarah Lavaway talked with students about their student loans. Here's their story.
To help students pay for their education and the general fees associated with earning a college degree. The current U.S. student loan debt is estimated at $1.75 trillion, according to educationdata.org. 1 out of every 4 American who attended school holds a portion of this debt. We spoke to Western Carolina students about their opinions.
I do receive financial aid.
I'm a first-gen college student and also from a lower class family, so I've gotten a bunch of financial aid.
The average student loan debt for recent graduates is around $30,000 for a 4-year education, while repayment plans start 6 months after someone who received financial aid leaves school.
There should definitely be a longer period to pay back student loans, especially with a lot of kids and everybody coming out of college. They're relatively young, and I know that a lot of people are still being supported by family members.
President Biden recently introduced a student debt relief plan after he was elected. Eligibility is determined from a person's annual income and must fall below $125,000. If you received a Pell Grant and met the income threshold, you could qualify for up to $20,000 in debt relief.
Package, everyone. Combined for over 60% of students said that they would vote good turnout for the student intention to vote. So this is good promising numbers for us here, that over 60% said that they would probably or definitely vote in this upcoming midterm election that we have been discussing throughout the show. Undecided is 17%. So student political in affiliation from the students that we polled, 32% of those students were registered as Republicans and 27% were registered as Democrats. But the biggest number that we see here that is very statistically significant here is that 38% of the independents, or 38% of students are registered as independents or unaffiliated. So big numbers that will affect the next election. So now we transition to student ideology. So a big bell curve here, which is usually what you'll see, but comparable to the data that we just looked at with students being undecided or unaffiliated, it would make sense that the moderate bar is the highest here, and we will get more involved in this later on in the show. But here we ask students to rate their favorability between the previous president and the current president, Donald Trump being the previous and Joe Biden being the current president. We will see here that 30% believe that Joe Biden was favorable, and they still think that way, and Donald Trump here at 38. So the reason that this data is significant is that with the low grade of this data, so this shows that students don't always affiliate themselves with a high federal government. So with this 38 being the highest, this means that students don't have a favorable opinion of the federal government. Now we're going to compare some of the issues that students ranked on a scale of 1 to 4. So with these issues, being ranked 1 through 4, 2 would be the average. That is what we're looking at here. This data is a bit confusing, but hopefully I can help you out a little bit here. So inflation is at a 2.5, and affordability of healthcare is the highest here. So that means that students cared a lot about inflation and affordability of healthcare. That is what drove them to the polls, and that is what is affecting how they're voting. Other statistically significant points within this graph are illegal immigration being so low at 1.71 and COVID-19 at being 1.63. So the reason that illegal immigration is such a low number is significant because in the 2020 election, the presidential election, illegal immigration was a very hot topic, and it's no longer that way anymore. But we do see that COVID is down, which can be alarming to some folks, but it is significant here. Now we will see the WCU students and how they trust their local government and their state government and their federal government. I think this is a bit typical here. As we can see, the federal government over here, there's trust sometime, and there's trust multiple time over here that is not super high here, and always trust is down across the board, which we will come to understand later on. The state government here, bit of the same, some trust, but not a whole lot, and the local government, which does have a little bit more trust here, but again, not the same. So trust in the government overall has been slightly down. And WCU favorability of the government, this is how favorably they think of the governments here.
We had reporters Luke Grozier and Deanna Sipe on the polls earlier today to get a better idea how the election day is going for Jackson County. Here's their story.
Jackson County as people come in to cast their final vote. Candidates Al Platt and Mike Clampett showed up to do a little more campaigning before the polling places close.
I'm running for the North Carolina State House in District 119. If elected, I would serve Transylvania County, Jackson County, and Swain County to comprise that district.
I am Mike Clampett, representative from North Carolina House Seat 119, Swain, Jackson, and in this election, Transylvania County.
There have been more votes during this midterm election than there has been ever before.
Voter turnout this year is exceeding the 2018 midterm election across the board, not just in Swain, Jackson, and Transylvania, also statewide and nationally. We're having a large turnout. A large group of younger folks are turning out, and they're turning out mostly on election day, it looks like. I think there's a renewed interest in our local and state and federal governments, and that young folk have an interest in that and want to preserve our republic democracy.
I hear from people that turnout has been very good, both in early voting and today. My attitude about, or my awareness of the young voters is maybe a little biased by the fact that I spent a couple of days on the campus at Western, where I interacted with a lot of young people. And yes, and there's a lot of energy there. But there was energy in the very beginning. The young women and men, and women especially in Silva, were very energized in September when Roe v. Wade was overturned, and I saw that activity too. So I think there's been lots of multi-generational interest in this race, and that's exciting.
It's very clear with voter turnout that these smaller elections are becoming increasingly important to your everyday person. But the question is, why?
Voting is important to me because my ancestors, my family bled, and unfortunately there have been people that they knew died in the cause. I think it would be a disservice to anybody, especially a person of color, to not vote. It is imperative for anyone, no matter what race, creed, orientation, religion, background, no matter any of those things, it's imperative for them to vote, because right now, where we sit in these midterms and also in the generals, there's a lot on the line. Women's lives are on the line right now. It's at stake right now. There is a lot of issues. Yes, sure, you can talk about crime. You could talk about inflation. There's so many things you could raise up, but there's even more pressing matters than those that is at stake. And I hope no matter which way you may swing, no matter which vote you may choose, I just hope that you take those things in consideration, because trust me when I say it's more than just the buck. It's all about the ballot.
We currently have reporters Abigail Quinn and Luke Grosier out in the field at the Jackson County Rec Center. They're reporting on the turnout, what they are seeing, and more.
Good evening, everybody. We're here at the Jackson County Parks and Recreation Center, where voters just finished casting their ballots for this year's election. It has been a steady ebb and flow throughout the whole day, with older demographics coming in the morning, and then people getting off from work in the evening with their children, casting their votes before the day gets too busy in the morning, and then after work in the evening. And when I spoke with Roy Osborne, who is the poll manager, he said that it's been an uneventful day where it has been slow. He said significantly slower than the presidential election, but still not dead, as I had said. There was a total of 497 votes casted this evening, which is significantly less, he said himself, than he was expecting, but not zero, which is always a benefit. He said that this could be caused by early voting, which is, as he said himself, one of the best things that you can do as a voter is to vote early, just because there's less things that can get caught doing early voting. Whereas in this election, or on election day, you will have more complications that could rise, such as people voting outside of their district or from other places in the county coming here hoping to get their vote cast. There's just a couple extra steps of paperwork there that need to be done, but otherwise everybody's votes gets counted. And it has been a pretty quiet evening. We had people coming in all the way until the end.
At the Jackson County Rec Center. While tonight is election night, early voting ran from October 20th to November 5th. Early voting can help make voting more convenient, although opponents argue it could also lead to ill-informed voting. Let's see what our reporter, Emma Hodes, and technical support Mason Felton and Dylan Sanford reported on for this early voting turnout throughout the midterm elections.
Midterm elections in North Carolina started on October 20th and ended November 5th. To Cheryl Kinsland, the supervisor at the WCU early voting place in the University Center, early voting on WCU's campus has seen no issues when we talked to her on November 2nd.
It's been very smooth. The students have been wonderful for us. They've been very upbeat, good attitude. We haven't had any problems at all here.
In her opinion, the amount of people voting early this year has increased greatly since 2018.
Statistics this morning that said that 20% of Jackson County had already voted.
Early voting is a great opportunity for residents to vote before Election Day and beat the crowds. For those who are not registered or registered in a different county, you can register and vote all in one day. This is an opportunity you don't get on Election Day. According to WCU student Nathan Sheets, early voting is an easy way for students to register and vote without having to leave campus.
Early voting was pretty good. I went really early, so there weren't a lot of long lines, and was no hassle in getting my vote casted.
If you haven't had the opportunity to vote early, you still have a chance to vote on Election Day, November 8th. According to Webster Chief Judge Gene Hodges, voting is a right for all, and it's important for everyone to vote, especially if they never have before.
We live in a democracy, and that means that we are ruled by the majority. If you vote, you are having a voice in that democratic process. If you choose not to vote, and if there's low voter turnout, that means you're handing off the power to someone else.
Let's welcome our reporter, Emma Hodes, and is here to tell us more about what she found out through her research. So, can you tell us how early voting fared in Jackson County?
Yeah, so Jackson County this year, early voting went quite well. We had around 30,000 people registered to vote, and in early voting, there were around 10,000 people who voted early, either in person or mail-in ballots. So that's a similar number to 2018, but it is a little bit greater than 2018, so it's a good number.
Okay, awesome. So looks like more people are going out, getting engaged with the actual democratic process.
Yes.
So in 2020, as a presidential election does tend to generate higher turnout than midterms, but we recorded about 21,500 votes in early voting, total votes, with about just under 15,000 of those being through early voting. So what does it show that we're kind of, falling under our early voting threshold that we were at in 2020, although we're, almost halfway to the total votes cast throughout 2020?
Yeah, so like you said, there's almost always more votes going on in presidential elections just because more people are getting out there to vote for presidential elections rather than midterm elections. But compared to 2018, our midterm numbers they're much better, and so it's a great number, and it's great to see people getting out there and voting in their midterm elections as well.
For sure, and that the 2020 voting could have also been fueled through the pandemic, more people going out to early voting to kind of limit the lines.
Exactly.
So I'm aware that there was Wi-Fi issues in the University Center during early voting, but they've since had that resolved. Are you aware of any other issues that might have gone on throughout Jackson County with early voting?
No, nothing really other than that. The small technical issues with some Wi-Fi, but other than that, it went really well. There was no issues with like voter intimidation or like any poor attitudes or anything. When I spoke to WCU's supervisor at the early voting place there, she said that everything was very great. Students had great attitudes, and everyone was really excited to cast their ballots. So
awesome. Yeah, and gotta love technology, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about demographics with early voting. We saw a turnout of about 50% from female voters, 44% from male voters, and about 5% from voters who don't identify as either of those. Can you talk about what that shows, why there might be a bigger rise in the turnout of female voters?
Yeah, well, so nationally, at the national level, men obviously they vote less than women. And at WCU, females, the demographic there's more female students. Jackson County has a higher demographic of females as well, so that adds to why the female demographic is a bit higher than males.
Okay. And then we also saw registered Democrat voters and unaffiliated voters roughly tied with the early voting turnout. 38% for Democratic voters and 36% for unaffiliated, whereas Republican voters only had about 26%. Can you say anything about what that demographic shows us?
Yeah, well, in a similar way, at the national level, Democrats usually vote earlier, usually through in-person, absentee, or mail-in ballots, while Republicans, in the trends, they traditionally go out on the actual election day to vote rather than voting early. So that's usually why the percentage of Democrats is higher for early voting than for Republicans.
Certainly, yeah. And, that could also be driven by those hot topics we were discussing earlier.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Is there anything else that you care to share about, early voting in Jackson County that you found?
I just think it's really great that our numbers were so much higher this year for midterms, and I think it's great that young people are getting out and voting in their midterm elections as well and casting their ballots and making their voices heard.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma. Thank you to our early voters.
Thank you.
Next.
Austin Ross and Ruby Annis have interviewed Western Carolina University students about early voting and their registered voting affiliation.
About how they're voting for this year's general election.
Out of 102 polled students surveyed on WCU's campus, 39 students reported being registered as independent voters. This follows a statewide trend, which makes North Carolina an official purple state. Political expert Chris Cooper says that the youth vote could decide where the county and the state will go.
Will you be voting this year?
Yes, I've already voted.
I already have voted. I'm a mail-in ballot, so I mailed it on in, and hopefully it should get there soon.
Kind of debating on it. Just trying to keep my views open on everything. But I would love to debate and vote on something one day, just to make the world better.
I will be, yeah. I just got registered to vote, so right here on campus.
So what party did you register with?
Geez, I'm not sure.
I'm registered independent, though I do tend to lean a bit more Democrat.
I'm just kind of viewing everything and not trying to settle myself in a party at the moment.
Yeah, I'm registered with the Republican Party, yeah.
With the Democratic Party.
Is there a political issue that you think is most important right now?
Probably election security and ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to vote.
It's really, really important to vote. It's your civic duty. Doesn't matter who you vote for, what side you vote for, as long as you get it done and you are well informed about it.
Election supervisors at WCU early voting site say voting is slow, but with steady turnout.
Lauren has the preliminary results from the early elections and the one-stop election. So, Lauren, what are those results and how did it come by?
So just to reiterate, these results are preliminary, so it is counting 30% of the registered voters in Jackson County. That would be early votes and absentees that have already been counted. So for the U.S. Senate race, Democrat Sherry Beasley is in the lead over Republican Ted Budd with about 600 votes. Again, early voters tend to lean more Democratic, as we've seen in past polls. For U.S. House Representative of District 11, Democrat Jasmine Beach Ferreira is in a 400-vote lead against Republican Chuck Edwards. For the North Carolina State Senate District 50, Democrat Karen Burnett McCracken is about a 200-vote lead over Republican Kevin Corbin. For the North Carolina House Representative District 119, Democrat Al Platt is about 1,000 votes ahead of Mike Clampett, Republican. And then for the commissioners' positions in this county, the incumbent Democrats are taking the lead in this by about 1,000 votes each. Brian McCann, Democrat, has about a 1,000 vote lead over Republican Mark Letson. Democrat Gail Woody has about a 1,000 vote lead over Todd Bryson, Republican. And for the County Commissioners District 2, Democrat Boyce T. Dietz has about a 1,000 vote lead over John W. Smith, Republican. And for County Sheriff, lastly, Democrat Rick Buchanan has about a 1,000 vote lead over Republican Doug Farmer.
Well, thank you, Lauren, for those results. Do you think that the preliminary results are going to leeway into the actual full results?
Well, we never know the final vote count, but we have seen in past polls that Democrats tend to lead in the early voting in elections.
And does that happen with most of the elections?
Yes.
Yeah. For the Senate race, that is a big race that's going on. How big of a lead did Sherry Beasley have over Ted Budd?
She had about a 500 vote lead.
500 vote lead. So you think that the preliminary results will be similar to the actual votes because Democrats usually vote early.
Mm-hmm.
And you've stated that. Does that usually occur? That happens every year.
And for the final results on votes, they will be counting them all tonight, and then by early tomorrow morning, we will have the final results.
Good. Cool. Can't wait to see them. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to the desk. I appreciate you being here, Lauren.
Not only our viewers tonight, but to everyone who made this possible. You are seen and you are greatly appreciated. This is Sadie Bean saying goodnight.
We would also like to thank all those who came out to vote, whether they voted early or voted on Election Day. You've gotten your voices heard and engaged in our democracy. I'm Nick Childs, and it's been an honor to be your anchor.